In this week's parasha, we read about the competition, as it were, between the two wives of Yaakov, the sisters, Rachel and Leah. And the Torah tells us that Yaakov met Rachel first. He was deeply in love with her. He worked for 7 years for her hand in marriage. And then he was tricked by his father-in-law Lavan and given Leah as his wife instead. Nevertheless, a week after marrying Leah, he married Rachel in return for another 7 years of work that he would do thereafter. And what happened is that Leah was the less favored wife, and she began to have children. First there was Reuven, then there was Shimon, then there was Levi. And Rachel was watching this, and she was becoming more and more desperate. She didn't have any children, and she became depressed and down. And the Torah says, "Vatakanel Rachel ba'achota." She envied her sister. And on this, Rashi makes an interesting comment. What was the envy? Was the envy the fact that Leah had all of these children? He says, no, it's a little bit more subtle than that. Rachel's envy was the fact that she felt Leah was a more righteous person. And that's why Hashem was blessing her with all of these children, and that she wasn't that righteous. And therefore, this would spur her on to become a more spiritual and righteous person. In Pirkei Avot, we are told that there are a number of character traits that are very, very harmful, that can take a person out of this world. And one of them is kina, envy. We're envious of other people. We meet somebody, they've got a bigger house than us. They've got a bigger car than us. They've got more children than us. They're more prosperous. They're cleverer. They're more beautiful, whatever it is. And we are consumed with envy. And that envy eats a person up. It's in their mind all of the time, 24/7. It fuels such a great deal of hatred and resentment. And it can literally take a person out of this world. It's a completely negative thing. But there is an exception. And that's the exception that we're being taught about in this week's parasha. If you see another person who is more righteous, who is doing more mitzvot, who has worked on themselves, and you think to yourself, I'm envious of that person. I wish I could be like that person, because that's the way one should be. And that spurs you on to greater action, then that's perfectly okay. And that was the case with Rachel. She wasn't jealous per se of the fact that her sister had more children. But she realized perhaps the reason why Leah has more children is because she's a more righteous person. And therefore I can do that. And so the Talmud tells us an interesting law, that when it comes to opening schools in town, Torah schools, even though there's one existing Torah school, another one is allowed to open and take away business, as it were. Why? Because kinat sofrim tarbe chokhmah. Envy amongst scholars and scribes increases wisdom. The existing original school will have to up the ante. We'll have to make sure that they begin to teach better to the children so that they'll be able to keep up and compete with the new kid in town. So if envy is to spur us on to become better people, then it's perfectly okay. But if not for that, stay far away from it, because it'll take you out of this world. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.